Um, I want to start not with what I was planning on starting, but just something that happened today that was really, really exciting to me that I wanted to share. And we'll talk about like pieces of this being relevant, but like really, this is just cool. I wanted to share it. So, as Rocky said, like I created approval tests. It's in a lot of different languages, so I do a lot of pairing with lots of different groups all over the space. And today I was working with Adam in the Golang version of approvals. And we were just sort of chatting. He made the sort of comment like, "Oh, I tried Claude, but I didn't really like it." And I was like, "Oh, you're wrong." Um, and then and then he mentioned that he had like all these lint errors, right? So he has like a bunch of linting errors in a lot of different projects. Maybe you have linting errors in some of your projects as well. They have enough of them that they actually
No,
turned
don't
off.
spank me again, Chris. No! I'm sorry.
So Uh, they have enough of them that they turned off like there's a setting in the linter that says, don't show me lint errors before this commit, right? And I was like, well, let's take a look at solving that problem, right? And so one of the things that we've learned is that like a good way to deal with AI is just push everything that can be deterministically done out of it. AI is great for stuff that's not deterministic. So script everything. But the coolest thing about Claude AI or Claude Code, not the AI itself, the Claude Code, is it's a CLI, which means that arrow can now go in front. So we wrote a Python program. Our Python program works like this. It runs the tests, just calls the CLI, runs the test. If those tests fail, it exits. If the tests pass, it runs the linter and it pipes the output to lint results. We actually put a flag on there to only do the first 5 results, right? And then it asks, hey, are there any lint problems? And if there are none, if it's all done, then we're done too. We exit the program. But if there are lint errors, now we go to Claude and we ask it to fix it. And I'll get into the details of what's happening here in a second. After Claude fixes the lint error, I run the test again in Python, right? And if those fail, I just revert the changes. Hey, you messed up. If they pass, I commit the changes. And I play a little bell. They just let us like know that like, hey, it did it. And then regardless of what happens, we're going to repeat, which means we go and we run the linter again. And so this is all very deterministic things that I want to happen, right? And it's all stuff that AI doesn't do that well. Like AI does not run loops very well, but Python runs a loop amazingly, right? So what's happening inside of this Claude? Well, we tell it to read this lint process file. We tell it to read the results of those lint reports. We tell it to select a random issue, fix it, and write a git commit message to a text file. That is it. This is the actual process file that it reads in its entirety. There's a couple little things worth pointing out here. We do say a random issue. We did that because maybe it can't solve everything, or maybe it is struggling with one. Like maybe you run it 9 times and the 10th time it will get it to fix. But we want to sort of like not let it get stuck so much. So if it runs through these like 124 things and it ends up with like 3 that it can't solve, those are interesting things that we should maybe look at. But like we want it to get through the other ones that are not interesting. And the other thing we put in here is never turn off linting, because the very first thing it did is I can get rid of that lint error. Let me put the don't warn me about it flag. So as the default, we had to like switch. And so like that's sort of like the process that we did. And when we did this, we just basically started hearing this like ding, 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 ding. And when I looked at the Git log, it started to look like this. And a couple hours later, we have no lint errors. And that's for this project. But like by Monday, there'll be no lint errors for that entire company. All of their projects are going to be lint error free. And that is amazing. And that is like one of the things you can do by harnessing AI into very focused pieces. Right? And a lot of where I found like this crazy power in AI is split it up properly, focus it, and then scale it. And it can do some of these things just absolutely amazingly. By the way, in case you're curious, we didn't write that Python file by hand either. We made a markdown file that described what we wanted, and it wrote it for us. Right. That's what writing code looks like nowadays. You write markdown files. So anyhow, that was my experience this morning. It was amazing for me. I wanted to share it. And now I want to shift topics completely to talk about exploratory testing with AI. Out of curiosity, how many people here have done anything with exploratory testing before? Okay, I got like 2 hands up. That is not abnormal, I think, for programmers.
Llewellyn, I don't know if you're going to be describing this later, but Milky asked what defines exploratory testing in the chat.
We will describe that later.
Okay.
Give me about 5 minutes. So I just talked about doing the linting. That's writing like a custom program that runs a linter, basically. Really cheap to make. That is like, I think, the key part of what AI has changed. AI has made it so the cost of creating a small greenfield project from nothing has gone to almost zero. It is really, really cheap to make small projects from scratch in AI. Not necessarily complicated projects, maybe not anywhere near the kind of complexity you want, but small, trivial toy projects. I think we can all agree AI has made those cheap. So I'm a coach. I've done teaching. I did a class for a bank. It was about, oh God, 9, 10 years ago now. And the bank wanted like an intro to agile class. And in that class, I ran Arlo and James Shore's agile fluency game. I ran it every single day. And like I've run that game a lot of times and played it myself and run it at meetups. And the thing about meetups is like people show up at meetups, they tend to play games as adults. Right? Like you can just sort of ask yourself, have you played games as adults? I'm guessing your answer is yes. And there's something I think self-selecting in that. But at the bank, there is no self-selection. It was just the people who worked at the bank. And so what would happen is in this game, they would unlock a new power. And then their strategy, the way they played, would not alter at all. They would do absolutely nothing to take advantage of that new power. And it took me a while to figure out what the heck was going on. Like, how are you not taking advantage of this new power you just got? Like, that's the whole point, right? You got new powers. You should use them. But because they didn't play games as adults, a lot of times they saw these as just like they're collecting. Like, oh, I'm collecting all these things. I'm not using them. So my question to you before we start anything here is, if the cost of making trivial pieces of software has gone to zero, how does that change your strategy of how you build software? Hopefully, it does change your strategy. Hopefully, you're not going to build software the same way that you used to when it wasn't cheap, when it wasn't free. Free software. What do you guys got? How does this change how you build software?
Experiment frequently and for time blocks, frequent time blocks.
Really. So one of the things I've seen Lotta do with this is spin off, 5 AIs and build 5 versions of an app, right? And then take the best of each. What's another change to your strategy? What are you doing different? What are you doing today that you were not doing in January?
All of the
We've
things that I need to do to get metadata about my code, like, you know, what is this inheritance chain that I'm dealing with in this legacy code structure? I can get it to write programs to create metadata about
Oh, okay.
and how my code works.
So I just want to expand on that a little bit. So so I mentioned we did linting this morning, right? So we asked it to draw a diagram for me in Mermaid about, hey, what is this process of how it does it? And it drew this in Mermaid, and that's, whatever. Great. I can't really put this on a slide, right? And I want to, right? Like I want to make the slide I just showed you. This slide. And so I'm like, can I copy and paste that? No. Like, can I find a website that takes Markdown and creates PowerPoint from it? No. I found a PowerPoint plugin, but that is so not what I want. So what I did is I asked it to write me a Python program that would create a PowerPoint for me of that Markdown. And it did. It ran it. It created this. If I open this, you can see it's asked me to repair it, and then look, it's crappy, but it was a great starting point, right? Like I was able to take this and clean it up and make this, and able to make this much faster than if I did it. So I wrote a program to create a crappy PowerPoint that I then threw away. That is a one-use program to extract metadata.
Milky is saying he's more comfortable trying new languages. He's not afraid of query building in SQL, Splunk, or Grafana, so that helps with analytics and observability of systems. And then yes,
Yeah.
making diagrams.
APIs and languages are no longer a barrier.
I have
Yeah.
today I was prompting Claude Code for my phone while I was at Costco eating pizza. Didn't do that in January.
Prompting it on your phone or for your phone?
On my phone.
Prompting anywhere, right? Yeah.
My laptop was at home. I was not at home. Still able to talk to Claude.
Nice. What else?
I have another one, but I want to let other people have their first turn too.
No, give it to me. What you got?
So I have a record in, say, JSON, and I want it to be shown to me in CVS, and I want it to be shown to me in Excel. I want to see it as a diagram. I want to see it as a markup table. I don't want to do that each time by myself. I just want to ask the machine to do it for me.
To do it. Yeah.
Yeah,
Nice.
data transformations are awesome.
Yeah. Anyone else? Other strategies that have changed?
I've been doing. Oh, good.
I'll go. So I am talking with friends and hearing what they want for small projects. And then I say, oh, this is doable, this is doable. And so the next step is to make those projects for them or help them learn. Some of them
Yeah.
are not developers, so they're just
Rapid prototyping.
Yep.
Prototyping. This is an amazing time to create something. So I want to point out 2 other things that I see show up here.
Oh, I have one I want to add.
Yeah. What do you got?
That's two kind of related things. I want to do a whole program thing, either a whole program query or a whole program uh, mutation. Like I wish that everywhere in the program where we use construct X, I was using construct Y. Or I just
Yeah.
want to discover every place that I have this thing. Those kinds of queries, I want to do them semantically. Like I'm trying to use a parse tree. I just don't want to. I don't want to write a regex for that. I want to do something with an API that understands the language and be able to either query or mutate the program that way.
So this is, I think, even more basic than that is like, I have found myself writing a lot of custom tools that are either one use or low use, way more than I used to like would ever write before. Right. But like a lot of custom tools. Yeah.
Just before we move on, I want to make sure that everybody who typed in the chat gets to be heard as well. So,
Yeah.
because you sparked a discussion, so there is a discussion going on in the chat.
Cool. So share with me from the chat because I can't.
Yeah, I used to do some I use it to do some small to medium refactorings. This is Wander. He says, for example, I asked it to rename a table and then all the objects named after that table.
Nice.
And then Zed says, get it to create test data.
Right. Love making test data with this.
Yeah. Milky says code comments are now more human and agent readable.
Okay.
Wander says, as a continuing to the test data for the table, as a continuing to the renaming for the table, and then the labels translations for 4 different languages. Wow. And then Steven says he's been using Atlassian MCP to
Lingual.
Sorry, I didn't mean to talk at the same time.
Sorry. I just didn't know how to spell at the moment.
Steven said he's been using the Atlassian MCP to understand the business rules that are scattered all over Confluence.
Oh, I love that. So understand business rules is like this is like creating docs, right? Back to our original thing.
And I used it to build a tool, just like a one-use tool, to find any like missing ITN translations in our whole
Love
code
that.
base.
Yeah, so this creating these one-use tools are just absolutely amazing. One other thing I would like to just make sure you add into your repertoire here is, if you can break your software into small independent components, right? And I don't necessarily need microservices. Like it doesn't, like I think of like those custom tools as like little services that help my software work. The more you can break your project into these independent encapsulated pieces, the more AI can build those for you and you can just assemble them. Right? So this like breaking stuff into small pieces, that skill is just getting more and more powerful. But there's
And then
one.
you can.
Sorry, go on.
I was just going to say, and then you can do like Unix command line where you just chain links,
Pipe them together.
output. Yeah.
And you'll see
awesome.
That's what we did when we took away the lint errors this morning, right? Like we used Mies to like create the linter. We used Python to run Claude. And then we had a very small piece of Claude that cleaned up a lint error. And you put those 3 things together and all your lint errors go away. The one other piece I want to put in here is, hey, maybe we should get better at knowing if the software works. If we're making all this free software really, really quickly, maybe it would be good to have something in our arsenal that let us know if it works better. And so let's return to the world of exploratory testing. You have your software and you want to know, does the stuff in it work? That is not exploratory testing. That is testing. That's like QA, like, hey, this program's supposed to do ABC. Does it do ABC? And that is a big world. But it is nothing, right? Knowing if the basic works is nothing compared to knowing how does this work with the rest of the world. In the universe of interactions that your software can have, how does your software work? Exploratory testing is so much bigger than regular testing or regular TDD. I'm about to try to explain to you this very big world, and it's going to be weird. And I'm not an expert in this. But it's okay. You don't need to be an expert. This is the world of exploratory testing. Exploratory testing is discovering unknown unknowns, which is very, very different than like regular testing, which is like discovering like this thing I know, does it work? It is asking the question, what else should I know about this software? And we're going to try to decompose a lot of these pieces so you can put them back together on your projects in your context. Okay, this is a game I like called Don't Starve Together. When you start this game, the map is empty. A plan is like, how do I go from point A to point B? But how I can't do that if I don't even know what the points are. So the question is like, how do I explore a space that I don't know? And one of the things that's shown up in exploratory testing over and over again is this concept of a charter. Let's time box a piece of an experiment and use sort of like a mission statement or a guiding idea, principle to explore. Now in here, I might say like, let's follow the shoreline. That'd be like a good charter to help me get an idea of the size of the map. I might say, go north, right? Whatever I'm trying to do, I'm trying to go north just to see how tall this thing is. I might say like, try to find a specific biome. So like if I'm not here, go to the next one until I can find a place. I might want to say, I want to explore this one area, map out this one biome so I understand it really thoroughly. These are all different charters. None of them are right and none of them are wrong. They are all ways of helping you focus going into a place of unknownness and staying focused to discover something that might be interesting. If you're trying to hack something, what a hacker is trying to do is say, how can I use this software to do something it's not supposed to do that benefits me? That's a very narrow slice of the bigger world of exploratory testing, which is just how can I get this software to do something that like I don't think it's intended to. Doesn't have to be beneficial. It just has to be interesting. Here are some heuristics that help you do those charters. There's a lot of them. We'll come back to this. But the point is, we stand on the shoulders of giants, right? You do not have to get good at this. You don't have to invent it yourself. But what you do need is a sort of army of pieces. If each of these pieces is small and free to create, you're going to need to create a lot of them to get them to work together. I think the four most basic pieces of this is our charter or our plan, the way we interact with software, and we're going to talk about that a lot. The software itself, and then finally your observations or your notes. In exploratory testing, the output of exploratory testing is insights. It is notes. Right? Some of them you will act on, some of them you will not. But that is the purpose of exploratory testing, is to discover insights. So the output is notes. It's different than like, well, pretty much everything else I do. In this thing, we have some other things. System diagrams or docs are things that we use a lot with our charters. Hey, what does this space look like? Right? I can look at that map and say, this area hasn't been checked in a while, or this area has just been touched, or this area hasn't been touched at all, right? There is a testing layer. Do you have things that make it easier to do experiments in your system? Right? And then from observations, sometimes we'll pull out regression tests, or we will do a shrink layer. Maybe you do an observation and you say, hey, when I did these 20 things, stuff went wrong. That can be confusing. Can I reduce that to just 3 things that will make the problem reoccur? All of these are sort of like smaller areas in this space. So notes, here's what I learned, here's what I did. I want to pause going further into this and go to a demo right now. And I don't want to do a live demo because I'm super nervous about trying any kind of repetition in AI. So I want to tell you about 2 demos I did while trying to prepare this talk. So we were in Denver for Agile 2025, and we did a hackathon for good. We had people show up from the Kemp Association, which is an organization that works on preventing child abuse. And we built a product for them over the course of 3 days. Very much an AI product. That's a different talk, but like we got stuff in the hands of physicians in the end of 3 days and data sent to the state for the first time ever. And we released 61 times over the course of 3 days. And so I thought, well, that'd be a good product to test. And so I did 2 experiments with them. I'm going to start with the one I just did. And I'm going to take you sort of through the sidebar here. So I'm doing this in Windsurf. And I started by saying, please read the exploratory overview process and follow these instructions. Right? So it does that. And the first thing it's like, I need to know how to interact with that. So I gave it a document on how to interact with this code. Right? It's a website. So it's not too hard. I'm like, open the web viewer or the web page viewer from Windsurf, right? Windsurf comes with its own web browser that's sort of hooked up with an MCP. It's like, okay, I need a heuristic to use. I said, use James Box SACT. So it reads that. It's like, okay, here's some ideas of what I could test. 12 ideas, right? But for me, I was like, hey, this parameterization thing, let's see if we can like break it by putting in like bigger emojis or stuff like that. All right, so I said, right here, let's do number 6, URL parameters. And so it went up, it opened this browser. You can see all the different tabs it opened to do different experiments. Here's some with emojis. Here's some with really long names. Here's just trying different names. Here we got like a test name at all. Here you'll notice stuff isn't working.
How is
And so-
stuff not working, Llewellyn?
So it says like, hey, I want this to be custom TA and custom BD, but we're not seeing that.
Oh, thank you.
So now I need to give a little more context. So let's go read that the Hack for Good interactions. This is a very small markdown file. right? It sort of says, here's where the site is hosted, right? All buttons should have an ID that you can reference. We'll talk about why that exists in a moment. And then I said, oh yeah, we have a README file. And now I want to look at the output of this test session. So test session 04 is its output. Hey, look how fresh it is. Haven't even accepted it yet. So here it is. Gives you a little TLDR, tells it sort of what the charter was, tells it what it did, tells it where the focus is, tells us some findings. This is an interesting finding. We have incorrect parameter formatting in our documentation. Our exploratory tester discovered that our README file is wrong about how it interacts. Tell me the TDD test you're going to write that tells you the same piece of information. This is what I mean by like, this is the space outside of your code, right? This is like, hey, this works great, but it doesn't work that great on the phone that just came out yesterday. And you're like, yeah, but that phone just came out yesterday. And they're like, yeah, do you want it to work with it? Right? Like it gives you information that you shouldn't know you don't know. But you're really grateful to get anyways. This test told me that my documentation is wrong. That is the thing I care about. It's the thing I want to fix. It's the thing I'm glad to know. Now, I asked earlier how many of you guys are familiar with exploratory testing, and we got very few hands. So there might be this question of like, hey, is this better than a real exploratory tester? And my answer is I don't care. If you have a real exploratory tester, use her. But if you don't, this is better than not having one. It doesn't have to be efficient. It just needs to give you useful information. And that is useful information. The other interaction I had, so if we go up here and we go past or go up into the top, one of the things it asked was, what should I use? And I use the SAC thing from James Bach. Earlier, I did one with slime. Maybe the other one was SAC. I'm not actually sure. This story might be slightly incorrect. In that interaction, it came up with this. So I'm going to pull up this website. I'm going to just make a new version of it. So,
Can I ask you a quick question?
Yeah.
The SACT, the slime, these are examples of exploratory testing frameworks or guides. Is that right?
Yes.
Thank you.
And we're going to make one together to show you how to do it. So here you'll notice like it looks like I'm clicking the button here and nothing's happening. Right? And that is actually by design. Like until you hit start, the buttons don't work. But the thing it pointed out is the interaction from the software is not telling you that it shouldn't work. Right? So I forget which test session this was. See if I can find it here. No, that's me testing nonograms. Counter only works here, right? Only works when the session is active. Like, hey, maybe we should fix our UI so it doesn't confuse users, right? And when I saw that, I was like, yeah, despite using that app, releasing 61 times in 3 days, it didn't occur to me that like, that could be confusing to people, right? So that's another insight about my software that it figured out for me and is now informing me of. So that's 2 insights that I get for, if not free, very, very cheap. That is what Exploratory gives you. It gives you insights. Usually gives it to you in the form of notes. And those notes usually have two pieces. Here's what I learned. Here's what I did.
And Llewellyn, with that, Christopher's asked a question. He says, insights and activities, activities and insights. Does it matter what order you record them in?
Not if you read the whole thing. But I really prefer if the insights are at the top, because if there's nothing insightful there, I really don't care what you did. All right. Another piece of this is the software itself. I want to talk about the testability of your software, right? This is a web page. But I mentioned that all the buttons have IDs, right? So if I go in here and I inspect this and look at one of these, will it do that for me? No, not very well. Let me just show the page source. There we go. This is much easier. Okay. So here we have an ID. This is the counter TA. That makes it much easier for AI to interact with this web page, right? It's hitting the MCP. It says, I want to click this button. Needs a way of talking. What button is it clicking? It's really nice that it has a unique ID. If you've ever written Selenium tests, this is a thing that's really nice to have. Jay mentioned when I was asking for strategies, having a way of like doing something across a code base. So like when I did this the first time, it opened up the browser and had a lot of trouble like doing anything with it. And so I asked it like, hey, would it be easier if there were IDs on all the elements? And it was like, yes, that would make this much easier. And I'm like, do it. Right. And so if I go and look at my GitHub, where did my GitHub go? And let's go here to Hack for Good. That is, yep. And we go look. Is that committed? Not committed. You will see it went through and it added IDs to all the buttons. So the software started out in a way that was not as easy for a machine to interact with. And it ended up in a way that is easier for a machine to interact with. And that is the part I want to talk about next. Right? Because another advantage we have, as we started to say, is it's really easy to make little things. Right? So that document that I showed, the test for good interactions, right? This is a pretty small document, but it's like, here's how you open the page, right? Here's how I want you to interact with it. Use that MCP. Letting it know the buttons have IDs, letting it know where some documentation is. Right? Very small, but very useful piece of information. What about the program you're working on right now? Right? How would you interact with it? Is it a web page? Can you open a windsurf browser and take a look at it? Right? Is it a REST endpoint? Maybe you can just hit it by curling it with some HTTPS. Is it a phone app? That's going to be a little bit more hard to interact with. Right? Or maybe it's just a library. Maybe you can write a CLI to it. Or maybe you can just interact with it by straight out unit testing. How are you going to interact with it? And then what are some things that are helpful when you're testing it? Right? And I think of this as the testing layer. So let's take a look at a REST endpoint. Let's say that you are making a microservice. Probably something a lot of people on this call have done. Right? You want to test a microservice. Well, that is, you're going to send an HTTPS request, you're going to get data back. That's how microservices work. That's your interface. What are some of the problems in testing an interface that way, right? One option is side effects. Hey, I did this thing. How do I know that it really happened? I sent a, sell all my stock. Did it actually sell it or not? It returned a 200 okay. 200 okay, 200 okay. Real world impacts. Hey, did it actually sell all my stocks? I didn't want it to do that. Right? That can be a problem. How do I test something where I don't want it to actually do the thing in real life that I'm asking it to do? Asynchronicity. What if it does something and I don't find out about it till later? Right? Data setup. How do I set it up so I can test the scenario I want to test? And state. The most common state problem is just login, right? Like how do I log into this thing and hold that state? All of these are problems that can make it hard to do the interactions that you want to explore. But you don't have to play in that space. You can make a testing layer, right? On a REST endpoint, a lot of times this can be either an endpoint or a parameter, right? So I could do something that, sets up my initial data as an endpoint. I can do something that says, okay, from now on, all results are synchronous. I can do something that says log very verbosely. I want to see what's happening by monitoring the logs. Log very verbosely. Right. I can do something that says return side effects, or I can put it into the parameter that says, don't just tell me it worked. Give me the details of what worked. All of these can be put in a testing layer, and that only exists if you start your app with the layer involved, right? So it's not going to show up in production at all. You're going to need a separate script like run for tests. And the question is like, does your app have this? And the answer is almost definitely no, it doesn't. Right? Very few apps are set up to be nicely testable. But creating small things for free means you can make your test have this now. You can ask AI to make a testing layer so you can start your app easily. Right? On a REST endpoint, it's usually this kind of stuff. But they're very different types of apps, right? If you're doing something like the app I actually brought up first when I was thinking about this talk was a thing called Dark Feature Editor. I think it's called Dark Feature Editor. Where did that go? Let's try that again. Terminal. Oh, right. Good point. There we go. So Dark Function Editor. This is an app that we used to use all the time when we would go around and do sessions on exploratory testing. This is way before AI, right? And so the first thing I wanted was I wanted a way to run this, and it didn't have one, right? So I needed like a shell script to launch the program. So I asked AI to do that, and it did it. And it was like, oh, I have to install Ant and stuff. And then so I was like, okay, well, there's this thing called mise en plus. And I was like, use mise to do that. And so all of a sudden, like stuff got installed for me nicely. And then I was like, but also Ant sucks. So like, can you upgrade it to Maven? And so it did. And then I was like, and now can you get rid of all the stuff that's related to Ant? It deleted like just many files. But anyhow, so now I have this nice little script that runs the Dark Function Editor for me. This is a Java Swing app. How are you going to make it so AI can manipulate your Java Swing app? Genuine question. What do you got?
Is that MCP?
You could make a custom MCP for it. I did actually play with that for a moment. There is a library for a Java Swing MCP. I was like, oh, maybe that would work. I think that's a valid answer. Make an MCP so the AI can interact with your app. I think that's a valid answer. Any other ideas?
You could create an alternate interface. Like this is displaying in Java Swing, but hey, like give it a CLI as well.
I think a CLI is a very valid way of doing this. There's a couple different ways you could do that CLI. The way that I would suggest is allow it to prompt with a script of actions to do. Open this, run this series of actions, close. One of those actions is probably take screenshot. Seems like that's really valuable. Yeah, Steve.
There's also this library called like assert.j swing. It's for like
Right.
UI
Where
testing.
you write a unit test against it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also a valid way of interacting with the app. Right. I don't want to say like there's a right or a wrong way to interact with the app. The way I heard this described to me, forget if this was Michael Bolton or James Bach, but was that we make websites that are accessible for people with disabilities. Like maybe you're blind, right? We put alternative text on images. We put labels on things so you can get around tabbing. Think of computers as like as low as you get on accessibility, right? Like you need to make it so that this very dumb thing can interact with your site or with your product, right? And the more you do that allows it to become easy to do that, the better. For the page that we did, I actually experimented with writing just some JavaScript functions. I wrote one that gave it, you could query and get back the state, and others that would allow you to effectively push buttons by just making JavaScript calls. Because I thought like that will make it easier for it to interact with. It can just write some JavaScript. I don't know exactly what's going on with the MCP, but it did not interact very well with that. Like I thought it would make it easier. It didn't. It might be different using a different MCP. But the point here is you need to interact with it. You need a document that says how to interact with it. But when you realize those interactions suck, realize that you can change your interactions so that it interacts with your software better. That is not a set in stone thing. That is a thing that has never been easier to change. And the next part here is exploratory testing is a creative endeavor, right? Like I mentioned it like akin to hacking before. Let's try to figure out what we can do that will make your software do weird stuff. Right? One of the resources that we use a lot in exploratory testing is the GitHub repo naughty strings. If you Google that, please include the word GitHub. It will give you this document of a whole bunch of strings that if you put into software has a tendency to break it. Stuff like the Bobby drop tables, stuff like null, stuff like negative numbers or positive numbers or UTF-8 characters. There's like it has like something like 1,000 strings that it's like, here are things that tend to break software. It has numbers that are slightly bigger than an int, right? Stuff like that. Or slightly smaller than the lowest int. All of this stuff, you need ideas on how you're going to create it. And one of the things that AI is really good at is coming up with ideas. Not necessarily good ideas, but it's really good at coming up with ideas. Recently got an electric car and we needed a name for the car. right? So we went to it and we said, hey, here's some names we like. Give me a bunch more. And look, it gave me like a whole like 20 names. Think of how hard that is to do, right? Like if I was to ask you right now, write down 20 names for my car, how long would it take you to get to 20 names? But I didn't like these names. So I'm like, do it again. And it did. Gave me another 20 names, different names. And I didn't like those names. So I was like, do it again. And it did. And then it gave me a name that I liked, Watson, with 2 T's. It's a good name. It is excellent at coming up with ideas. So when you look at those charters, the first thing is, okay, here's the space that I'm playing on. What is the exact thing I'm going to do? And one of the things that we ask it to do is give us back a bunch of ideas so we can choose one, right? Because it's really good at coming up with ideas. It's just not really good at choosing a good one. All right, so
I think this is funny. Sorry, in response to your story, Milky says naming is impossible. And Steven says, soon kids will grow up and say that an LLM picked their name.
oh my God, yes. I mean, it's not a kid, it's just a car, but it's in progress. Okay. So what are the pieces that are coming together here? I have note taking, I have a charter, I have a way of interacting with the program. I even have a way of evaluating how I interact with the program. I have ideas that comes up with, and it has notes that comes out of this. I want to take a look in the charter file, right? So this is that thing that I showed you before, right? James Bach is pretty popular. Let's do another one of his. Let's do, actually, let's do, is that a thing? SF Depop. That does not roll off the tongue. Let's do SCOWS. SCOWS. I know this exists because it's on the image I Googled from the internet. Does anyone know what SCOWS is? Yeah, I don't know what it means either. That actually turns out to be totally irrelevant. Please read Making Charters Process and follow the instructions. Great. Which framework do you want? I forgot how that was actually spelled. SCOWS. SCOWS. SCOWS? SCOWS, I don't know. Great. I understand you want to do that. Do we know who did that? Oh no. So it's just searching the internet right now. It's like, hey, not entirely sure it is, looking for more information. What does it stand for? What's the thing? Let's just say made by James Bach.
I like this swimming and diving metaphor it's using.
Metaphors it uses. So it's saying I can't.
Need clarification on Scout's heuristic details to proceed with documentation.
Fair enough. I have it set to talk to me when it needs to get my attention. Not seeing anything there. Scows, exploratory heuristic. Okay, so this AI knows about it, which is great. But let's see if here, let's try this.
It looks like Cows is part of SACT.
Does look like that. Let's give it this document. Please read this.
Okay, so this is super funny because Mark has just clarified in the chat that a scow is a type of sailboat. So this is
Oh,
the
is it?
scow's process from his Secrets of a Buccaneer Scholar. So it totally sounds like it falls into like a pirate theme or something.
Oh.
I think that's awesome.
So here we have here's how it works. I'm just going to stop it here.
SACT SCOUS process document completed and ready for use.
Cool. Let's try to use it. Please read exploratory testing overview. Okay, so I want to go back to our slides for a second to see what's about to happen. This is the overview. It's going to need to find out note-taking. It's going to need to find out the charter. It's going to need to find out how to interact with the program. Is there something specifically you would like me to do here? That is not at all what I would expect it to do. We are going to work on this project. Great. Would you like to use the sack cows that I just created? Sounds great. Here's some ideas. It's great at generating ideas. Let's see what we got. We can look for observability. We can look for authentication, not as interesting. Cognitive savvy. Nope. Only increments by 1. Vulnerabilities, not as interesting. Boundary testing. You just click the button, so it's hard to hit boundaries. Disposable time. Spend unstructured time. No. Journey testing. Contrast ideas. Other minds. Test how the app does on different multiple browser tabs. That should be no problem. They should work independently. Words and pictures. That seems interesting. Okay. Yeah, let's do words and pictures. Let's try number 10. Words and pictures. Okay, this is just my regular browser. Where is my Chromium? I'm going to close all this so we can see what it's actually doing. Don't know if it opened that one or not, but I think it did because it said opened URL. And there's like a really valid question here, I think, of like, will it find anything? And I have no idea. Like, I made the scows thing in front of you. right? Is it relevant for the surface that I'm testing or exploring right now? Don't know, right? But the whole point of exploratory testing is for it to find unknown unknowns, right? And again, like it's never been cheaper to do this. It's never been more possible to get some of this information for yourself. You can see it interacting with the app. You can also see here on the side, it's taking notes. So while it's doing that, let's go look at some of those notes. So it says stuff here like duration 30 minutes, but I don't think that is actually in any way real because that was not 30 minutes. Here's its testing activities. Here's its findings. Counter buttons are inconsistent abbreviation styles. That's true, but it's also what the psychiatrist wants. The NTA is a 3-letter inconsistency. Fair enough, but not information I'm going to use. Counter problems lack proper area labels and roles. I don't know what that means. What's an area label? Does anyone know what that means?
They're labels for people who are visually impaired to understand better what the buttons do or what they
Do.
Yeah, like screen readers and stuff can read those labels.
Yeah. So we don't have
But
screen readers.
But it's also useful for like test automation and things like that. It allows you to test like more what you see on your screen as if a user were. So it's also relevant.
Let me go to GitHub desktop for a second and added IDs. Can you add how do you spell that? Aria attributes. Did it find anything else while it's doing that? Observations. No. So it looks like that's its main look from there. Oh, I might need to give it oh, it found it. Cool. This area live, is this the thing we're talking about? People who actually know what this is?
Exhausted my ARIA knowledge.
You've exhausted that
It's been more than 5 years since I worked on front end, so
stuff.
yeah.
It allows the screen reader to read out values as they change.
Does it?
Yes.
Oh, that's actually really cool.
In this case, politely. There's a assertive option, which is more aggressive.
Aggressive. Oh, okay. So what that tag is doing is saying when you read it out loud, be polite about the reading. It's like tone of the read.
So that is an ARIA attribute, but that is not the ARIA labels that the other thing was complaining about.
There is on line 13 the ARIA label.
ARIA attributes have been added to the hack for good counter app.
All right. So just a quick index HTML. You can see it added like a whole bunch of stuff. That should now show up here on the refresh. Yep. So we're seeing a lot of IDs get in here. We're getting tone get put in here. We get an ARIA described by, we get an ARIA label. We are fixing a problem I didn't know existed or even what it meant like 5 minutes ago. This is discovering your unknown unknowns, and that is exactly what exploratory testing is supposed to be about. And there is now a way to do it if you do not have an exploratory tester on your test. Like that is what I got for you. That is what I've been exploring with. And now that we can make software faster than ever, it's kind of nice to get information about it faster than ever as well. Any questions?
Yes, I had a question.
Yeah.
One of the one of the components that you've got there is that like instructions on how to interact with the app, right?
Yeah.
And so like you've described this all as like a really low cost, like easy to do thing, but like in practice, like that kind of documentation is can be hard to do and maintain. Like in this case, like the app is pretty small. And for that matter, I mean, in your process, you could have asked asked your Windsurf or AI tools to build that document for you.
Yes. And I very often do.
Okay. Um, I just wonder if you've got any thoughts or advice on like I don't know, how to make that approachable because like
So the first thing is let's say you have a really large app, right?
yeah.
The last thing you want is for this document to be big, right? Context is like a problem and effective context is a bigger problem, right? Like as soon as that starts to get defocused and cluttered, the results from AI go to crap, right? And so if that document is big, you've got problems already, right? So what you want is like maybe you do have like maybe you have 50 different ways you can interact from the command line, right? At best, you want that to be 50 lines of here are the things you can call, right? And if you want to know more about those, here's the corresponding file pattern that will tell you about it, right? So it only gets those 50 things. And then it can go and check, okay, I want to call, dot dangerously skip permissions. What does that do? So it goes to that document about dangerously skip permissions. And this goes back to like the first thing we talked about of like, now that we can make things really cheap, the secret is encapsulating things into small individual like pieces, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
When you do that, whenever you work on that section, you can just say, "Hey, the thing I just changed, can you please update the docs?"
Yeah, awesome. Or you could have it in one of your process files that you've talked about before.
Or you could have a process file that is called by a script that is hooked to a Git hook.
Hmm. Oh, I
Right.
like that. Oh, nice.
Right? You can also do it as a GitHub action. Both of them end up being the same thing, but because Claude is now a CLI, you're triggering the prompt to update your source code, and you're not involved.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Could you repeat the last like idea, the one Rafi liked? A process file that is called by a script and
So you can pipe pipe a prompt into Claude, and it will just do it, execute, and exit. Right. That is what we saw in the uh, so in the delinter, right? That process is just saying call Claude. Let me see if I can pull out that actual Python script for a second. Um, 1 second. No, that is not what I want. I want Gmail. Atom delinting Python. There we are. Okay. Uh, file. Try again. New file. Delinter.py. Okay. So here I have a Python file. It needs to call Claude, right? Find Claude. Fix with Claude. And the way that does that is it reads this file and then it calls it in the Claude and tells it, or gives it the dash print as a command line, right? And what that does is it says, take the input that I'm piping into you, use that as your prompt, and when you're done, exit. And that means that like now I have a program that can run Claude. Now that program can be run from a Git hook. So whenever I change it, it gets the prompt, look at the recent Git change and update the corresponding documentation to reflect the changes. Right? Or it can be run by a GitHub action. So you can have an action that says, hey, I just got a commit pushed. Let me look at the last commit. Here's the information, do it. What I would probably do in both of those situations is make the script print out the results of the last Git commit and pipe that to a text, like put that in a text file, and then in the prompt say, read the text file about what just changed, rather than having AI try to figure that out. There's no reason to, right? Like that is a deterministic process. Take it out of AI's head. But that way, you now have this being done automatically. And so your documentation stays up to date because whenever you change anything, AI fixes your documentation to keep it in date. Or anything that you want to do. It can also run the linter and fix the linting. It can run your formatter and fix your formatting. It can check for, did I miss a translation? Like whatever you can make a small prompt to do, you can now make it so it always does that. Anything you used to stumble on before, you can write a prompt and not stumble on that ever again.
We have a question from Christopher. Is exploratory tester a software role or a human role?
I mean, it is traditionally done by humans, is the way I put it. I've known exploratory testers who are so good, their companies did continuous integration without any automated tests. That is a thing I did not think was possible before I saw it happening. A good exploratory tester is really worth it. If you have one, use them. If you don't, AI does a pretty good job at stuff. Use it until you got something better. By the way, exploratory testing is a really broad thing, but like penetration testing would fall under that. Performance testing would fall under that. All of it goes in pretty much the same way. Like find a way of showing it how to interact with your site, give it a charter that's more specific. Like, hey, let's bombard your site with a whole bunch of inputs and see if it breaks. Or, hey, let's run a whole bunch of, let's see if we can do SQL injection. Let's see if we can like read all the different exploits that are out there. See if any of your software is vulnerable to it. Yeah. And you've already been using AI to discover zero-day hacks. It's the same concept.
So you just mentioned the context, and that was another thing that was catching my eye while you were going along this. Like each of the components that feeds into this is more context that feeds into this.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so how have you been managing like keeping the context manageable?
Short. I mean, like, keep it short. It'd be the way I would put that. If you look in the making a charters process, I have a line in here that's like, keep it under 50 to 60 lines total, right? Like, which is a sort of like, don't get too verbose here. This is going to go into my thing. Is a general rule, like, especially if you're generating any of this stuff with AI, like the phrase improve and simplify has been really useful to me because if you just say improve, it gets bigger. Like AI wants to be very verbose. I ended up throwing this away. I'm not sure if I saved a version of this, and I'm in Windsurf, which I don't think has local history. Does it have local history? No. Um, but when I first did this, I asked it to put in some JavaScript seams that I had created, and it spit out like, I don't know, maybe 80 lines about it. And I was just like, shorter, just a list. And it reduced it to like 10 lines. Here are the function calls, right? That, like, keeping it focused and concise is part of your job of collaborating with AI to keep it on track. And then the other thing is you notice like I'm dropping context all the time.
Well, that was my other question is I didn't see you doing that, but I figured you might have been, but I'm not as familiar with windsurf,
So
right?
if we go here to current context, every time I hit that plus button, I'm dropping context. And you can see like all of these exploratory testing things going in here. Here's stacked. So like these are the times I've dropped context in the last 3 hours. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Like I've dropped context 8 times.
But I suppose if you've got your process files there and you're referring it to the process file,
Yep.
then
So,
that's
so everything that is process related is in the process file, so I can pull that up. Everything that is context related is also in a file. They're not process files, but like, for example, Hack for Good Interactions is not a process file, but it is a content file.
okay.
Right. And I go back and forth to those all the time, and that's why I'm thinking Markdown is the new code. Those are the things
When
that persist.
when you in your linting example, every time you ran Claude in that Python script, is that the
Drops
equivalent of
context.
dropping?
Yep,
Yeah, so every time you fix a lint, you've got a brand new context with narrow instructions.
exactly.
Nice.
Yeah. All right. I think that might be all we got for tonight.
Oh, we could definitely end. And I am always so curious about your context files, and I have or your process files over there, and I have quite a few questions on it. So shall I dive into a
Yeah,
few?
yeah, go for it.
First, it's not a question about it in just specifically, but you have an uncomfortable number of unsaved changes over there.
Yes, I think that's fair to say.
Okay. All right, I'm
Mainly
just
because a lot of that was done recently. But yes, I
just
have
as
an
part
uncomfortable
of
amount of the other thing that's interesting about this is most of the time it's operating on so like the thing we just did with the ARIA changes, right? That's not in this repo. Right? Like the exploratory testing is going from this repo to another repo and modifying it over there. So the rollback ability, which is what I'm using Git as sort of a ratchet of like, hey, AI, you can do something stupid because I can always roll it back. Like you can't make a mistake that actually hurts me. And here, because it's doing it in other repos, I've been doing the commits there more than I've been doing them here, right? Like, so these are the ARIA changes. Um, but if I go to like the actual exploratory, yeah, I've got tons of documents in here that should change. And then I have like these test sessions, which are arguable whether or not I should even be committing them. I don't know. Um, Here I have that program I wrote to like create a Python or to create a PowerPoint presentation. Like, do I care about saving that? Like, I don't know. Maybe. I don't know. Star, star, star. Stuff. That's a horrible commit message. Now I
Yeah,
have less uncomfortable amounts of stuff.
I completely agree. And gives us more freedom to play around and look.
Yeah.
So I think I have kind of two general types of questions, and you could just say, no, too much. But I'm curious to know about all of these process files. And I think maybe an easy place to start is just to review the linting files. Is that a good
Okay,
place?
so these are different. This is from the linting stuff I did this morning, right? I just needed a way to like get it in so I could do it. So that's the stuff I showed you here of like, here's the linting process,
So
right?
just those 15 lines
Just
are the
those 15
linting process.
lines.
Like we're talking for
And
each file. Mm-hmm.
yeah, and then I in my default file, I have it use voice, right? So sometimes you would hear it talking to me, right? And so here I didn't want it to talk to me unless something went wrong. So I didn't want it to catch my attention for something going right. That's why we added that chime, right? Because it was just very monotonous and in the background, and we could tell stuff was happening, but it never really took our attention away. Whereas
Mm-hmm.
like when it talks to me, it takes my attention away. So I had to tell it not to talk to me. Um, and then not a process file, but here is a content file of what I want that Python to look like. And then when it was done, we asked it to draw us this diagram. This doesn't look as nice, but when I preview it, it works pretty well. That's there we go. And that we did because so like I mentioned, I did this with Adam, and at his company they do a very common technique called pull requests. And so his question is like, oh, I'm doing a pull request with 150 commits. Um, how am I going to get that accepted? And the first thing is the fact that it's 150 commits makes it easier to get accepted, right? Than if it was just one commit, because that takes forever to figure out. One of the things he said is it would have been nice if it was sorted by type, right? Because then you could go and you could chunk it easier. And I agree with that, but we didn't do it that way. But what we did do is make this diagram, and then we put that into the pull request, and we said, here is how all these commits were made, right? So that as you can understand the process, you can start to go quicker and be like, okay, I understand why AI is making these commits. I'm just doing like a sanity check as opposed to having to deeply understand each individual go like, why does this error need to be double checked? Or why does this variable need to have a different name? Or why are we no longer using the arrays.sort, but we're using the sort ints? You know, like all those things are things that like have occurred over time that the linter is cleaning up. And you just need to get like a basic of like AI is sort of on this. It's reading the lint error, it's doing the fix. Did it do something that looks bad? And so we had it create this diagram for us because we could put it in the pull request.
We have a few questions in the chat now.
Yeah.
Um, I'm gonna read this whole thing here. Could you apply exploratory testing to the ETL ELT processes in data engineering? The process may work in small data sets, may fail in large data sets, and also we need to consider the related costs in doing such tests.
So okay, so there's like a lot of questions in that one. Let's break them down. First of all, let's go and talk about not this testing layer. Okay, what would you need in a testing layer to make it so you could easily test an ETL? Right? Feels like you want some sort of CLI that says, "Hey, I ingest these files. Ingest this file." You might already have that, right? Like I don't know how you're kicking off your ETL. It could be more like a cron job or something like that, or it could be part of like a system that's harnessed. So it's like a triggered job in your database or something else. Um, so you need some way to let AI trigger out that thing. You have real world side effects, right? Are you running your ETL stuff on your production database? Hopefully not. Don't tell AI to just go into your production database. That doesn't feel super good. Um, if I was to let AI go into my production database, not that that is a thing I would do, but if I was to do something like that, I would write a small Python script that allowed you to say, run this query, and the first thing it would do is check if that query is destructive in any ways, right? I'm not as worried about it doing a search. I'm much more worried about it doing a create, an update, a delete. Those three operations I do not want it doing on my production database ever. I might be okay with it just querying, right? You might also want to put into SCLI something that like returns a time. Here's the results, and here's how long it took. Right? That'd be a thing that like you could easily pop into a Python script in front of your database. If you're not going against production database, can you set up an environment for it, or can you have it set up an environment for you? Right? This is a place where Mise en Place is going to be great. Mise will probably set up an environment for you. You can shove some data into it. You can ask it to write you a program to shove some data into it. That seems like a test layer interface that'd be really nice. Generate me, 1,000,000 rows for this table, right?
How concerned are you with the quality of the data that it's creating?
For
How
data that's
lifelike,
test data that
production-like?
I'm going to throw away, very not concerned. But one of the things that it's really good at is give me sample data. Give me some like plausible sounding data. That is something AI can do like really well.
Okay. Actually, I ask this question.
Mhm.
I mean, just from like kind of a real world experience,
Mhm.
we want to do the kind of migration from the older system to the new system. I mean, just usually, let's say if we use some older GTL tool like I would say like informatic. Now we want to change use like DBT,
Mhm.
These things, I mean, I just want to, for example, we have an older system running. Now the DBT want to take over, right?
Mhm.
I'm kind of, let's say, usually we do like a kind of test in different environment. I mean, this how, for example, for exploratory testing can help. I mean, just to make
So,
sure, I mean,
okay, so you have like 3 or 4 different issues that you're dealing with. I just want to break them into separate parts and then go back to the idea that like getting AI to work effectively is getting to break things into lots of small components that can work independently. And so like one component would be how do you know your current system is working? Right? So that's probably going to be like adding regression tests, right? Add regression tests on your current system so you can figure out if it works. Once you have that, then you might want to put a separate process in place to refactor it so the layer that interacts with your existing system is separated and encapsulated, right? Refactor that, run the test, see that it works, pull it out. And you can ask it to do that, right?
yeah,
Once you have that process in place. And then once all of that's encapsulated, now you can swap over to the second system, right? So now build the second system. It might be nice to have documentation about what the old system does that you've encapsulated. You can have it create that documentation, right? Swap over, you're doing regression tests. And now that you swapped over and you know that it does the same stuff that the old system does, Now add exploratory testing to say, and what else does it do?
I'm just going to call out one thing that like that approach works really, really, really well. If you have if you're working with tools that are not DBT, but King Hee, you mentioned using DBT.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this is a new tool. Let's say, suppose the older tool is also some like a product, right? We kind of bought from the third party. We didn't write this stuff ourselves, right? Now, I mean, even to make a second system, I mean, just I mean, kind of imitate the old system. It's not an easy task. Let's say involve hundreds of ETL jobs. I mean, just
But you
you
can
know,
still write a testing layer to a system you do not own.
So the one thing that I would wanted to call out is that I think the thing you may be struggling with is not specific to exploratory testing. It is specific to the testing layer because the testing layer in DBT is so different from what we would normally apply to a coding program. And that's just the thing I wanted to point out was creating that testing layer is a bit harder, but you would need to do it even to create reproducible tests of the system.
But you can still do it. If you remember when we were working in DBT together, like we made a script that allowed us to run a query. And before we had that script, running a query at all was like a minute and a half.
Mm-hmm.
And after that script, running a script query was now like 5 seconds, which still sounds long, but like it's so much better than a minute and a half.
Yeah, sorry,
Right?
Llewellyn and
Like,
I have worked in DBT together on some of this stuff, making the
yeah.
and
So really pay attention to your testing layer. Really pay attention to making your software testable. It is possible. It's not necessarily easy, and it almost guaranteed is not there out of the box.
okay, yeah. I just want to kind of ask this question to
Yeah.
see, yeah, if that all this just this exploratory testing could help, yeah, in
Yeah.
certain way, yeah. You answer my question. Okay.
Thanks.
We have another one here
Oh yeah,
from
wait a
Wander. We've got what I like the what I like about the idea of using AI for exploratory testing is that the end result is learnings or potential improvements, as you said in the beginning. It's another way of brainstorming with AI, which in my experience works really well. Not everything will be useful, but sometimes it gives you some good ideas, or at least something can be reused or repurposed.
Yeah, this is a concept that Lauder Kessler really introduced to me, which is reverse direction, which is a lot of times we ask AI to do something for us. You can flip that around and have AI ask you or like propose ideas to you, have you feel like it doesn't have to go us saying AI do this. You can say, hey, tell me what you're gonna do. Let's agree about it. Explain it to me, diagram it to me, give me options. You can reverse the direction of command with AI. And when you do, AI becomes much more of a collaboration partner than just like a lackey. Anything else?
I really like the idea of how exploratory testing can help us work better with AI, this or quickly greenfield generated AI tools and projects.
Mm-hmm.
And so thank you for sharing that concept with us. I'm looking at your files, and maybe there's 6 or 7 files there labeled exploratory testing. And so I think we created several of them, the James Bach one today. Did could you go over the ones that we talked about today, just maybe as a summary, but I'm really curious about
Okay,
what
so this was
those
an experiment I played with earlier where I tried to say, so like this is a slide I didn't show today. Um, but was like, hey, we have all these great exploratory testers, right? So like Elizabeth Henderson, James Bach, Michael Bolton, Ash Coleman. Just to be super clear about, um, but like these are people who have are really done a lot in this field and have written a lot about this field, and so like, what would it look like to say write an exploratory process from the view of Elizabeth Henderson? And the answer is it looks horrible because Elizabeth Henderson knows so much shit that like you cannot make that file terse, right? And then it's no longer focused, right? Like she will take that vast amount of information and then take a slice of it and focus. But if you try to put all that into a file, it comes out really disjointed and scatterbrained. So it's much more useful to take one of those heuristics. And I'm not even sure, like, I, I can't swear that the right way to do this is to make a heuristics for scows. There's a part of me that wonders, like, should I make a heuristic for the S in scows and a heuristic for the C in scows? And like then just spawn off in the same way as we use the linter, lots of AIs that take a single letter and explore my problem safes and then come back with a whole bunch of notes. And then maybe another AI that goes over all the notes and gives me a list of here are the important insights that you might want to actually pay attention to, right? That is very possibly the way we should be doing this. Like, this goes back to like what I said in the very beginning is I think right now what we really need is this army of very focused agents. Um, and I'm exploring that, but like this is a field that changes so rapidly. So rapidly. Yeah. So that was my experiments there was just
okay.
What happens if we take a personality, but the personality was way too big to give me a good focused result.
So then you ended up with the one we used today, which was sect scows, which was inspired by James.
We also have slime. I also have one for just sacked itself. Those are the ones that you're doing there. And again, we have all those different heuristics. I would be surprised if every one of them didn't have a place that it is valuable.
Great.
Just not all at once.
Yeah.
Definitely not all at once. There are going to be individual pieces that give you information or not. Like that's also a very valid result of exploratory testing is I did not discover anything. That is a valid response.
Thanks.
By the way, this is a weird file for me, the miking charters. This is a process file about making process files. So like that has hit a new level of meta for me.
And did you construct that, or was that constructed as an artifact of you interacting with the AI? Not that there's much.
It's the second one. I interacted with it and then I said, please look at this conversation and create a process file about how I interacted with you. And then it wrote that and then I deleted it a lot. I'm a fan of deleting. Yeah.
And so we saw this in action earlier. Since this is a new thing, are you a fan of it? What, like, is this working out? Is this process file making other process files something that you're going to do more of?
Yeah, I think the answer to that is yes. It's been weird. Like in April and May, I made a lot of process files. And then things died down in like June and July, and I made a lot of content files. Whereas like, hey, these processes are good enough. Let's do stuff with them. And then in like mid-August, so this is also a conversation I remember having with with Adam from the Go team, where we were making these things called micro features, which are content files about like maybe a class or even part of a class. And it has this really nice effect that like we can build them in Python, and then like I'd be like, oh, it'd be nice to have it in Java, and I can just go to Java and be like, hey, read that micro feature. The examples are in Python, and then it will build me the Java equivalent. And then I can be like, okay, go to Go, and be like, hey, right there. And so like that feature can now move to different languages really quickly with me. And when we did that, we're like, oh, it was really good that we made these features. We probably should have made user documentation for them first. And Adam's comment was like, when we started this, we didn't even have version numbers in our releases. And I was like, yeah, that's a good point. He's like, it's like everything that we get off of our plate frees up our brain to be more dissatisfied with something that it didn't care about before. Right? It's like you get that extra, like, now I can be picky about this. And so like those process files allowed me to make a lot of content, and then I started to get more dissatisfied with the things that weren't getting done. And so now I went back and I'm like, okay, now I need process files for these, and that probably means like now I need more content, and then I'll probably like I can imagine this pendulum swinging back and forth of like, okay, now I'm dissatisfied with this. Okay, oh great, now I'm happy with that. Let's do a bunch of, oh no, now I'm dissatisfied with a new thing. Right?
Thanks.
Yeah. All right.
So, oh, what was that?
Oh, is there anything else there, or do we call it here? Any more
Well,
questions, or shall we end?
before we wrap up, there's a
Mhm.
couple of things that I want to tag on to the end, if you don't mind.
Not at all.
Okay, great. Okay, so one of them is, hey, we've got a pretty cool talk coming up next Wednesday. I'm going to share a link to that in case you haven't seen it. I'm also really excited about this one. This is Ray Myers talking about AI hates legacy code. A theme that comes up pretty often is, hey, how do we take the learnings that we've got here and apply them to our legacy code, to our big applications and that sort of thing. And so this is the theme of his talk, is like how can we do better with the programs that we work in day in and day out, which is a very cool idea. I'm going to share our Discord again. So please, if you're interested in getting links to the videos from any of these talks, or joining in discussions or starting discussions with some of our cool members, please come and join our Discord. And I want to thank you all here for coming to join us, and especially Llewellyn for doing this talk. This has been very cool and sparked a bunch of awesome discussions as well. And so thanks for coming up with your questions as well, everyone.